Harry Potter.
The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look. Was this normal cat behaviour? Mr. Dursley wondered, trying to put himself together. He let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mr. Dursley had a nice, normal day. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, birdwatchers everywhere have reported that the owls have been behaving very unusual today. Although owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight, there have been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newscaster allowed himself a grin. 그리고 이제 날씨와 함께 짐 맥거핀으로 넘어갑니다. 짐, 오늘 밤에도 부엉이들이 올까요? 글쎄, 테드, said the weatherman. 그것은 잘 모르겠지만 오늘 이상하게 행동하는 것은 부엉이들 뿐만이 아닙니다. 그리고 전국 곳곳에 별똥별들이 있었어요. 그리고 오늘 밤은 비가 올 것 같군요. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair. Shooting stars all over Britain. Owls flying by daylight. Mysterious people in cloaks all over the place. And whisper or shisper about the Potters. Mr. Dursley came into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. He'd have to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. 최근에 언니한테 연락 안 왔었지? As he had expected, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretended she didn't have a sister. 연락 없었는데요? 왜요? 아니, 뉴스에서 재밌는 일들이 있어서. 오늘은 말이야, 별똥별도 쏟아지고 마을에 웃기게 생긴 사람들이 많았어. Mrs. Dursley sipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Dursley wondered whether he dared to tell her he'd heard of the name Potter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said as casually as he could. 그들의 아들 말이야. 두들리 정도 나이가 됐겠다. 그지? 그럴 거예요. said Mrs. Dursley stiffly. 걔 이름이 뭐였더라? 하워드, 맞지? 해리. 그치? said Mr. Dursley, horrified. He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed. While Mrs. Dursley was in the bathroom, Mr. Dursley crept to the bedroom window and peered down into the front garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down Private Drive, as though it were waiting for something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have anything to do with their Potters? If it got out that they were related, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dursleys got into bed. Mrs. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley couldn't sleep well. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dursley. The Potters knew very well what he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of Private Drive. It didn't so much as quiver when a car door slammed on the next street, nor when two owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner the cat had been watching, appeared so suddenly and silently, you'd have thought he'd just popped out of the ground. The cat's tail twitched and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever been seen on Private Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright and sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots were unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak, looking for something. But he did seem to realize he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly, and the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street, for some reason the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, 알고 있었어야 됐는데. He found what he was looking for in his inside pocket. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times it clicked the put-outer, until the only lights left on the whole street were two very tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of their windows now, even beady eyes Mr. Dursley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. Dumbledore slipped a put-outer back inside his cloak, set off down the street towards number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment, he spoke to it. Hi guys, it's Jay. Today I read you second series of Harry Potter. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Please subscribe and leave a comment for me to make you better stories. J-Love!